Hey everyone, this is Tim Souza with Real Estate en Route, and I am super excited and happy to be here in Portage La Prairie, this is Warren and his son Andrew, and they're with Royal LePage here in Portage La Prairie. And so I would love to give them an opportunity to kind of introduce who they are and how long they've been in real estate here in Portage.
Well, Tim, welcome to Portage La Prairie. Thank you for coming. I am the owner-broker of the real estate. We started the company, it's coming up to 9 years, February 1st.
Okay.
And so I had an almost 25-year career in media, doing running radio stations and things like that. And you know what? It was great, but it was time for a change. And so when it was time for a change, that caught my interest. And so we started a company, and we've been at it ever since.
Nice. And so you started the company and you partnered with Royal LePage to be in this community? Okay.
Yeah, and Royal LePage it's like a franchise situation, right?
Okay.
Yeah, so we looked at all of them and we really were attracted to their value proposition and what they brought to us, so that's what we did.
Cool. That's awesome. And so Andrew, how long have you been in real estate then? Did you follow your dad, or how'd that work?
Yeah, I started in real estate in March. So
okay.
I'm new to it, I'm enjoying it, and it's going to be a fun future.
That's awesome. So you got a little bit of experience, a little bit of kind of like new to the market. This might be fun as we talk about what's happening.
Yeah, and so we work as a team now, and Andrew's been with us, coming with me about 8 months. And it's been really enjoyable.
Awesome. I love it because my dad is in real estate, and I've done this, and this is kind of fun to following, and like kind of it's like job shadowing on an extreme level.
Right. Yeah.
I love it.
I am finding though that more and more as I hand things off to Andrew, he does a great job with them, and so he runs with it, and so it just allows us to do more things and
grow and scale the business a bit.
Yeah, exactly.
That's pretty cool. So tell me about what is real estate like here in Portage? What is it? I guess we are about an hour outside of Winnipeg, right, in Manitoba.
Yeah.
And so what is, I guess, the economy, what is the market like here when it comes to the home market?
Right. Well, Portage has been a very stable market. I mean, we kind of have consistent numbers year over year. So about 240 houses per year sell in the market in our area. And that doesn't really kind of tend to go up too much or down too much. Pricing is pretty stable. We tend to see growth in the 1 to 2 to 3% per year. And so it's slow and steady. So we're not anything volatile, but it is, very predictable, very comfortable, very, it just moves along.
Awesome. And you were saying a little bit earlier that there was like some new influences in the community. Is that changing the way that like the market works at all, like with new businesses coming in?
Absolutely. So in the past 2 years, as we were talking, Tim, we've had about $750 million, $800 million worth of investment in our community. With a couple of different plants. Yeah. And for us, that was massive. On a community that kind of is very stable and predictable, all of a sudden our market changed. And so we had an international company in Roquette open a plant, and Simplot, which has a French fry plant here. Portage La Prairie is French fries. A lot of French fries. With McCain's and Simplot having huge French fry producing plants here.
Does that mean there's a lot of potato farms in the region then? Okay.
Yeah, and we're a very agricultural based community, lots of potatoes, lots of vegetables, then of course the grains, and all of those kinds of things. But this has changed our market, and so what it has done is it's brought new players into our market, it's brought different people into different companies into our market, and so what we found is that what we were doing over the last 5 to 10 years, we're learning new ways. People are showing us different things, and you're an example of that, coming through our market and talking to us about new and different things and different ways of doing things. So it's been an exciting time.
That's cool. And so Andrew, as you've kind of joined your dad in this, what's been the most interesting learning so far for you?
All of it. I didn't have any kind of background in sales or nothing, so kind of getting into real estate, it was fun, just interacting with people and learning kind of the processes for everything. It's been fun. I enjoy meeting new people, seeing all these different houses and everything. And for my first sale, it was exciting. It was something to just it's a lot of fun. I don't know how to explain it. So
Yeah, so in market trends in this community,
Yeah.
I've been it's been fascinating for me to visit communities that are outside of like the Greater Toronto area and
Right.
see how they're affected. So how is Portage La Prairie affected from what happens in Winnipeg? Is there are there policies that have been passed or anything that has happened to Winnipeg that has dramatically affected the Portage community, or are they relatively separate because they're sustainable on their own?
Yeah, we are relatively separate. I mean, obviously, Winnipeg, in a province of, just over 1 million people, in Winnipeg having about 750, 800,000 of them.
So the larger chunk.
It's the mouse and the elephant,
Yeah.
kinda. So obviously, when Winnipeg does things, we always take note. But you know what? Primarily, we would, Winnipeg would be more of a larger city environment or process, and we view ourselves much more as a smaller, rural, farm-based,
Community.
We still do business on a handshake, and we still do business face to face, and we still do business in that fashion, maybe more than some of the larger centers would. But again, some of that is easier because we can get across town in 15 minutes, and I can come and see you in 15 minutes. And
True,
it's not
right.
a 2-hour drive or 3-hour drive, going somewhere and traffic.
And construction and like all those pieces.
Yeah, and so that part of it, and then of course when we do business rurally, it's still very much driving out and meeting with people across the kitchen table over a cup of coffee and doing some of those things.
Cool. So talk to me about how the market does operate then, kind of as its own independent community and bubble.
Yeah.
When's a good time to buy? When's a good time to sell? I know that back in California, we follow the school, or at least where I'm in California, we follow the school system.
Yeah.
Right? So like people mainly buy and sell come summertime.
Yeah.
Right? Because the school kids
Spring and fall, yeah.
Spring, yeah. And so, but I know that like when I was in outside of Ottawa, they were saying it was kind of completely opposite. Summertime's a dead time because everybody's off in cottages. So what does it look like here in this community?
Well, we 5 to 10 years ago, we were much more driven by a few cycles. We have a large RCMP detachment of Portage La Prairie.
Okay.
And so when they used to have moving season, they would have that 2 or 3 times a year. That would have a large influence. 15 members would come into the community and they have 1 week to do a house hunting, and then they go back, and so that happens. We have a large military base. It's the primary, all of the initial flight training for the Canadian military and all of the helicopter training for the Canadian military is done here in Portage La Prairie.
Okay, interesting.
And so they used to have a moving season as well. That when students and things would start and when they would end 8 or 10 months later, so you'd have this cycle of this big uptake.
And would people be buying and selling, or they just mainly come in to rent at that point?
Well, no, they would buy and sell.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. They would come in, and the students obviously not, but the trainers and the mechanics and the flight crew people.
So if they were here for like a couple years,
3 to 5 years kind of is a typical stint with them. But what we found though, and then of course the agricultural ebb and flow works, too, that when all of the people are working in farms and everything is going in spring and all that planting is happening, there was a little bit of a lull there. And then of course in fall when harvest is happening. So those 3 things layered on each other could have kind of these peaks and valleys, But what we have found in the last 3 or 4 years is that with the military and the RCMP not having a so-called moving season anymore, they're kind of constantly doing it. They used to kind of like,
this is the time to come in,
in 1
this is the time
month,
to leave. Okay.
most of the people would like kind of go on a house hunting trip. Now what we're seeing is it's kind of happening every week all the time.
Really?
So it has flattened it out a little bit in terms of those peaks and valleys where it's a little more consistent, But I don't think we're a whole lot different than a lot of markets. I mean, we have a kind of a bit of a slow time in July, August, where people are on holidays and doing their thing, and then of course, right around Christmas and early January when the temperatures here can be minus 30 degrees, there's a little bit of a lull, for
the Americans who will watch this, minus 30 is basically the same. Celsius,
cold.
Fahrenheit, it's just cold.
Yeah, it's cold.
You're freezing your butt off. Yeah.
Yeah. But other than that, we're pretty consistently busy in terms of the market activity.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then, and so you have your kind of your lull times, but then everything else is like you're seeing. Does that how do I put this? Does that make the inventory kind of also follow a pattern?
Absolutely, we do see some of that. Yeah. We'll see maybe certainly February, March, we'll see an influx in inventory. As people kind of get ready for that March, April, May, June cycle.
Right.
And then we may see it be a little flat, and then we'll see August, September, a lot of inventory kind of bump up again, or.
So then when is a good, so with that, when have you found a good time to buy and sell? For when you're like, if you're to tell a seller or tell a buyer, like this is the time of year where you should be thinking in Portage around buying, or this is the time of year you should think about selling, because you'll get the most bang for your buck.
And obviously, depending what end of the spectrum, if we're working for sellers, then what we would say to them is, use those bit of the slow times to do those little things that we would encourage you to do in your house to get it ready. So the curb appeal, the inside, the tidying up, the little things that you want to fix and paint and those kinds of things, so that when you do get to that February, March, or you do get to that August, September, your house is ready to come on, it's ready to go, and it's
just jump on
it's done.
That market.
If we're dealing only with buyers, I mean, sometimes there's a bit of the deals in those off seasons, so if somebody's house hasn't sold through a season and all of a sudden we get to a slow time, sometimes some people are, for whatever reason, are a little more motivated to sell. And so if we're dealing just with buyers, then maybe that's a strategy for them to
take a look at when they're in this community.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. And I always find that as a fascinating question, because it seems like every community operates slightly different around when their high and low seasons are. But even the fact that it's July, August are slower versus like July, August is the time to buy and sell.
Right.
Where I grew up, right?
Yes.
So I'm like, oh my gosh, you have time in the summer. That sounds phenomenal. That's a little bit of a breath.
And even some of our farm communities, because they've worked hard for several months for getting everything in, and they know that their fall is going to be taken up, so they'll take some time in the middle of the summer to maybe do some little holiday stuff or get away if they can, because they know that their times are going to be used at different, their work is coming.
Right. And so talking about that, so do you sell both in the city and in rural?
Yes. Yeah, we would kind of be in this south central Manitoba pocket within, let's say, maybe for Americans, 30 or 40 miles of Portage La Prairie.
Okay. So that's kind of your zone of,
and so we'll deal with rural properties and properties in smaller towns here. And then I do a few different things. I do maybe a little more commercial in Portage La Prairie than a lot of people.
So maybe what is commercial like I haven't actually asked this question, so this will be a first on this channel, but what is commercial like in Portage La Prairie versus what we might assume it to be in somewhere like Winnipeg or
Right. Well, you know what? It's been, commercial has been kind of like the rest of the market, kind of plodding, I would say, plodding.
Okay.
But the last 2 years, there's been a significant influx, with all of this other stuff coming and all of the investment in the community. So we have had a lot more interest, inquiries in leasing space, office space, retail space, some new restaurants coming to town.
So you're really seeing kind of what we're seeing with brick and mortar kind of shutting down everywhere else. You're seeing it kind of grow here.
Absolutely. We've had a really nice 2 years of growth of new investment, new things sprouting up. It's been really great.
That's kind of fun.
Yeah.
It's kind of the opposite of what we're seeing trend-wise then across the rest of North America.
But it's been our, I guess it's our moment in the sunshine, I guess. You know what I mean?
So taking that, that's really cool.
Exactly.
So then how are you leveraging technology? And maybe this is an opportunity to kind of have Andrew lean in here. So technology-wise, as you're seeing the commercial market grow, as you're seeing, these larger apartment buildings and condos come in, how are you leveraging technology to both kind of I guess do your business, do your business, and then B, kind of communicate the changes that are happening?
Yeah.
Well, I know a lot of it's going to more of the digital marketing, and a lot of it is online. So we've dabbled in taking videos of inside the house, trying to do that virtual tour, seen elsewhere, doing a little more of the drone a little bit. We dabbled in that.
Talk to me about droning. Yeah, we were had a short conversation about drones in the air, and with the military nearby, I know that there's like stipulations and things around it. What's that look like?
We don't do the drone a whole lot because we've got to get a couple of things, but we've been able to use the drone just for country properties, get a nice little view of the land, outbuildings, because it's sometimes hard to capture that.
Right.
And it's just been a fun thing for people to see, and well, for me to use. So it's been good. You know, we can share that on Facebook, and people who may have seen just the house, but now you can see the aerial view of it and what the land is like, the area is like.
And so some of the things we've leveraged together is, so in addition to what everybody is doing, you know, using the MLS system, using the franchise websites that we're using our own websites, you know, we're all kind of doing that. We're all kind of the same that way. But, you know, what we have been doing is trying to create some additional pieces. So we do a monthly newsletter called the Real Estate Report for our area.
Oh, cool.
And so we have tips on it. We always create the stats for it. So we'll do some year-to-date stats and some monthly stats and talk about what's selling and what prices are selling, what kind of volumes are selling. And so those are easy. We communicate with people, and they want to just give us our email address, and we can add them to our list of sending this out. We're into Facebook marketing. We're using Facebook Marketplace. You know, we're using some of the other platforms. Kijiji in our area has been
very helpful. People use it.
Yeah, okay. It's been good, and so you know we're doing that. And then of course Andrew is kind of introducing me to more technology and more things, and I find it hard to keep up with the Twitter and the everything else that's coming. I feel like it's coming at me fast, and for those of you younger guys who are native to this digital stuff, it feels like it's all fine. But yeah, so Andrew is kind of helping navigate our business more and more into that world. But my focus is not losing
the human touch. And
right.
Yeah.
And not ever thinking that people can't come in and see us and chat with us and talk with us and things like that, even though we can leverage much more activity digitally.
Oh, fair enough. And so I find it very fascinating to watch this industry transform with technology, because there's you're right, it's kind of a prime space to be disrupted. Yeah. Right? Like it's an older industry, and so I mean our model is old. It's been around, like I think this like the oldest or second oldest occupation on the planet, right? Like if you really think about it. Yeah. So it's kind of like, okay, we have an older model, but technology has really an opportunity to revolutionize.
And it just really allows a lot of competitors to come into the market at very low cost or low barrier to entry, and try something, you know, or do something, or and we're seeing that, and you know, some of it's really exciting, and I think it's great for both buyers and sellers. And then some of it maybe isn't so well thought out, or maybe doesn't work out the way people have hoped. But it's interesting to have a front row seat to that.
Yeah, and it'd be actively getting your hands dirty with it.
That's and in some cases participating with it and using it. Yeah.
Cool. So in the next, I guess, 1 to 2 years, where do you see the market headed? We've talked about like where it's been. Where do you see it headed in Portage?
Well, you know, we have an interesting cycle now. So, you know, we've had a relatively stable market, but in the last 6 months, 8 months, we've had approximately 250 new rental units, apartment buildings come on. Okay. And so that would represent, I'm going to guess a little bit, but probably somewhere between 50 and 70% additional capacity to the market. Okay. And so, you know, there is a lot of talk about, well, what's that going to do to single family detached resale property?
Because you were saying that's been like the traditional.
That's very much the traditional.
So what's a traditional lot size in?
You know what? Portage? I mean, if you used 50 by 110, you'd probably get a big chunk of it. Okay. You know, 50 feet wide by 110 feet deep.
And so you're going from 50 by 110 to what with your condos built up?
Yeah, you're going to a 900 square foot, 2-bed, 2-bath with a little balcony, you know.
And so for people of Portage, it's kind of a bigger step to take maybe than for people coming in from Winnipeg, which is what you were saying, that they might recognize a bit more.
We haven't had any of that really before. Portage has seen just more home rentals, or you know, maybe split up a couple rooms here and there, but we haven't really seen like these big apartment buildings. We have a few, but not, you know, you have your own little balcony and everything.
And another thing that's relatively new to Portage and hasn't caught on like elsewhere, at least at this point, is condo sales.
Okay, talk to me about that. What's going on with condo sales?
Like, I mean, you know, we have a new condo project, the Yards on 4th, but like when I look back, if there's approximately 250 sales per year, I would say probably under 10% of that would be condo sales.
Okay.
So 15, 20 per year. So, but in other markets, Winnipeg and other larger centers, condo sales can make up a huge portion of the market.
So like much greater than 10%.
Oh,
so
yeah.
like what would that look like? Actually, we hadn't had the opportunity to interview anyone from Winnipeg because nothing worked out with, like, people had to cancel. It got busy, weather, last week weather. So what is the percentage of like condo sales in Winnipeg to your knowledge versus?
You know what, I would really be guessing, but I wouldn't be surprised if they were minimum triple. They might be 25, 30% of their market. Might
like
be
a third of the market
sales.
when it came to condo sales. Interesting.
Yeah, and when you of course, from the media standpoint, when you look at what's happening in Toronto, Vancouver, Calgary, Montreal, like those bigger centers, I mean, you hear a lot of condo sales happening, and that's just starting to kind of get a foothold in Portage and just starting to happen.
So if you were to communicate to people, people in Portage, and you're like, hey, this is we're becoming like these larger centers, our market's going to diversify. How would you communicate what's happening in the condo market here? Because you said you just had a whole bunch of new condos built in the community, right?
Well, not a bunch, but we had 8.
Oh, 8.
For us, that's a bunch.
That's just a bunch. Okay. I guess I would say that's like a minimum viable product trial. Like it's a trial run of how condos would work.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, it's been it's been a little slower on the uptake than we were hoping, but maybe it has to do with our market right now is maybe a little more price sensitive than it has in the last.
Okay, why would it be? What's going on in cause of that?
I wish I knew. Our interest rates are great, and the litmus test is a year old, and a lot of that stuff is kind of financial stress test is all
settled in at this point.
And it's there's a process there. So I'm not exactly sure, to be honest with you, why there's been a little bit of price sensitivity,
but
we're just finding it that way. Yeah.
Interesting. And with condos, is that kind of helping bridge that gap a bit, or are you still seeing resistance just because you're seeing it's a different market for condos to be in?
Yeah, it's just a new thing for us, and it's a new kind of thinking for people, and the other thing is we just really have such affordable housing that if you can stay in your house for $200,000, or you can move to a condo for $200,000. We have this more traditional thinking of, well, then let's stay in our house.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah.
My question, that is kind of a fun one in this, but what has been your favorite interaction with a client?
Great question, Tim. What comes to mind kind of rather quickly is not maybe a specific interaction, but with a specific group of people.
All right.
And so we talked a little earlier about new Canadians, new people coming to our community, and I've had an opportunity to work with a lot of them. And you know what? I just love working with them. They're so trusting. They come to you. You form a relationship with them, and they just say to you, okay, like, we just need your help. We don't know, like, so what do we do? Like, how do we get started? We want to buy a house. Like, what do we do? And so you really kind of take that extra time and effort to walk them through the process, to show them how it works, to introduce them to the right people, whether that's bankers or lawyers or home inspectors, make sure you understand their needs, where their kids are wanting to go to school, if they have kids.
That's cool.
If a lot of them come, they have one vehicle, and so do you need to be close to other amenities that you can walk to, and all of those other little things. And so that has been just a lot of fun and then when you give them the keys that first day, you meet them at the house and they go, there are your keys to your brand new house. And they're cool. Just like,
they're so
gives me goosebumps a little bit.
They're so excited, and I guess selfishly I would say too, the second lots of fun is to watch Andrew as he's been starting to work with clients and work, working with the initial people and making those sales. I mean, it's just very, very gratifying to watch him start to do that as well. And so that's a little more of a selfish thing or a personal thing, but it is very pleasing to me.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, and I think both from a, your son following in your footsteps, like that's awesome. And then from a caring for these people and being the one person that a lot of these new Canadians can rely on.
Yeah.
Right? Like it sounds to me, it's like you feel like there's this extra calling almost to like be
you
there.
kind of are very, very cautious to make sure that you put them in front of the sale or them in front of your needs and wishes, and just make sure that they're really, really well served, because they just put their faith in you, they put their trust in you, and you just need to really kind of
honor that a lot.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great way of saying it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's cool. And so if you were to give buyers, I said buyers or sellers, but let's start with buyers. If you're going to give buyers advice the next 3 to 6 months, and I think I'm going to split it. If you're going to give like a traditional buyer who's been buying and selling in Portage for a while, and then or if you're going to give a new Canadian buyer advice for the next 3 to 6 months, what would you tell them? What would you want them to know? What homework would you give them in that way?
Yeah, I think some of it would be very traditional. Okay. You know, go to the bank, know what you can afford. What are the other conditions behind? You have to sell before you buy. Is your wife interested in the same things you're interested in? Are you looking for? Do you have common interests in terms, or do you agree on what you're looking for? So those would all be the same. But I guess beyond that, I would say, you know what? Find somebody you're comfortable with. You know,
find an agent that you're comfortable representing.
And you know, I would even go so far as to say some people are comfortable going and doing things on their own and buying for sale by owner or whatever. Just know what you're doing. Take your time and just. But I would argue that why not take advantage of the professionals around you? Why not take advantage of a professional banker who can give you the best mortgage advice, or the home inspector that'll give you the best advice of what you're buying? And I would argue a realtor who would say, give you the information that you need to make a great decision for you. Absolutely.
And so I want to touch on FSBOs because you brought them up. But so I'll pause because I want to talk about, this might lead us into advice for sellers. But like for sale by owners, what do you find in this market around FSBOs? Is there a lot of people who want to try to sell their own homes? Is it because it's a smaller community? Does it?
Right.
There's a few, but we don't see a whole lot of them. I think around Portage, anyways. It's I think we've made a good name for ourselves as realtors too. That we're honest, hardworking people. Now we're not just.
The other thing we do see though, Tim, is we do see things different by age group. So we'll see the 35 and under, I call them the HGTV people, they have different ideas where, the 45, 50 and over, maybe a little more traditional, not just with realtors, but in how they do business, right? They'll go to a bank. They won't go online and apply for credit. They'll go to their insurance place and buy insurance. They don't just do it like online. And so we feel that, or we see that translates to us as well. But when we're dealing with 25, 30, 35-year-olds, they're much more quicker to, try different things, go in different directions. And so we just need to be open and ready to work with them in a different way. Okay,
cool. So what advice then would you give to people who would be looking to sell in the next 3 to 6 months?
Get ready, get ready. Take advice from the people that every one of us in our family has somebody that's like, just has that great eye. And ask them to come into your house and say, okay, be honest with me. Like, how does it show? Right. Because I always tell people how we live in our house and how we show it to sell it are very different. You might love that beautiful old chair in the middle of the room that is perfect for you watching TV, but it's horrible when people come walking in and
right, because they don't want to sit in that chair.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
That's your chair, not their chair.
And you look around at some of the decorations, some of the clutter, and some of the knickknacks, and maybe some of that needs to be just boxed up for a little bit. And I kind of always phrase it around, we're doing this to sell it, not how you're going to live in it. Right. And so you just need to kind of get your mind around. Just take some advice and follow through with that. And the other little things are first impressions. Have some of your friends or people that come in and give you some feedback. And obviously for realtors, we see hundreds of homes a year. And
So you guys, how many homes do you buy and sell a year?
40 or 50.
40 or 50. So like at that point, you're basically at 4 homes a month or something like that on average, at least, right? So your advice then would be kind of you're closing 4 or 5 homes a month, and so
Yeah.
that means that you've been in how many outside of
Dozens. Yeah.
and so
And over years and over months and over.
so you've literally seen thousands of homes
Yeah,
then at this point.
yeah.
So to take an advice from someone who's been through thousands of homes is
Yeah.
the kind of the value of leaning into a
Right.
team like you guys.
Right.
Right.
And sometimes it's no different, I think, than anybody else who spends a ton of time doing what they're doing. Sometimes you go to them and they'll give you an answer quite quickly, and sometimes you may go, oh, they didn't think about that long.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? They've actually thought about it for the last 20 years. They've
Right.
spent tens of thousands of hours thinking about it. So the fact that they can answer your question quickly, you know.
Well, and I think it's too that like if you've sold like 50 homes this year, and I've sold 1 home in the last 3 years,
Or
right?
maybe your first home ever because you bought it 25
25 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Like I think you're going to have more of that opportunity to maybe speak to what's happening in the market and have knowledge than
Yeah.
I would, even though I probably could learn, but there's just, I mean, everything from zoning to legal to all these other pieces,
Yeah.
right? You're going to know that answer
you know
much
what,
quicker.
Some of the catch up that happens when people have been in their homes a long time, and you know, you go and you meet with them, they go, yeah, well, our fence isn't really on our property, but we've lived with our neighbors for 25 years and it's fine. Well, you know what? Now it's time to catch up. Like,
Yeah,
let's get
those are the
that moved or
pieces.
whatever. And so again, I kind of frame it around that whole conversation of how you live in it and be in it is different than perhaps this process we're going to go through to sell it.
Right. Well, and that's the value of having a real estate agent, right? Specifically one from that community who understands
Right.
what's going on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Cool. And so I think my last question for you, is there anything that you wanted to like talk about or something that you like really want people to understand about Portage or this community or buying and selling in this community that I didn't ask?
Yeah. No, you know what? I would think that if you came into town and you met with us or any of the other realtors, I think what you're going to find is you're going to find primarily a group of people who grew up in a rural setting, who value things that we do business face to face, we do business perhaps a little more on handshakes in other places. And so I think you would just kind of see a little more of a traditional model than perhaps maybe you would in downtown Toronto or downtown Vancouver or something like that.
Cool.
And it just revolves around how we live and who we are.
Well, 100%. Like this is I think that's my favorite part of going from community to community,
Yeah.
is that I say we, I speak in the plural a lot. We collectively, I guess, the viewers and I have gotten to communicate and engage with people from different like mini cultural groups, right?
Yeah.
Like this would be a different cultural group than you would find in downtown Toronto.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, even though you have the same kind of influx of new Canadians, you have
Yeah.
the same kind of older Canadian, or I mean, second or third generation families who've been here, who
Yeah.
like have history here. It's a different culture, so that everybody's kind of adapting differently than they would in a downtown space.
Absolutely.
Which is pretty cool.
Good.
So I think actually, last question, I lied. This wasn't the last one. This is the
last
second last question. It's like second breakfast.
Yeah.
You know, you always got to have one.
Exactly.
Sorry. So the second last question. What is your vision for real estate? What is your kind of your hope? You're like, why are you in this business?
You know what? I like Andrew said, like what attracted me was dealing with people, helping them solve a need.
Okay.
Whether that be buying or selling, feeling like I had been engaged in the community in a variety of different ways and served in a lot of different boards and groups and different things, and have been involved in our community. And I just saw this as another avenue in which to kind of
Be involved in the community.
Yeah, and I just saw it as a career path for the last 10 or 15 years of my working career. It captured my imagination, and it just caught my interest, and it still does. I still am, excited to get up in the morning and come and do what we do.
Yeah.
Well, it's rewarding to feel like you've helped someone at the end. You give them the keys, and maybe it was a rough one or something like that. They had to jump through a couple hoops, but in the end, the person's excited. You've helped them out, and you know that they're going to move forward and enjoy their house, and hopefully they enjoyed working with you.
I still fundamentally believe in our system. For several 2 or 3 generations, Canadians' path to wealth has been through their homes. We've bought a home, we've paid off a home, and then we've sold it at some point in the future, and those homes have appreciated, and I still believe that to be true today. That the path to wealth is different to everybody, right?
Right.
But you buy a home and you keep it for 15 or 20 years and you sell it, you will do well. And that is going to then infinitely make your life better in the future.
Well, and so I think then what you're saying is in part you appreciate and you love and you have the vision to help people kind of begin their journey of developing that wealth. Right, so that they can take care of themselves when they're older, so they can take care of their kids, that kind of thing.
And we all view a home as something different than just a pure investment.
Right.
I mean, you live in it and you raise your kids in it and you have your pets in it and you have family in it. But at the end of the day, it kind of comes full circle and it is a great investment, in addition to all of the other things that you can use it for.
Right. It's kind of a great, how do you put it? It's like a, I guess a 401k type thing.
Absolutely.
That like
and I
is
don't know
multi-use.
I don't know what's in the States, but in Canada, it's tax-free, it's capital gains exempt. And so if your house goes up 2 and 3 and 4 times, it's one of the few things in Canada, we have a fairly heavy tax burden.
Yeah, a little bit.
And it's one of the few things that in 20 years from now, you get 100% of the benefit of that right back into your pocket.
Okay, so I actually haven't had anybody explain the capital gains piece to me. Do you mind taking a moment and explaining
capital gains? Well, I don't want to pretend to be an expert in any way, but basically there's a lifetime capital gains exemption in Canada. But in your primary residence, if you buy and sell, there's a few rules. Like I believe the rules have changed. You have to live in it for 2 years. But for those people who buy a home and live in it for 10, 15, 20 years and sell it, there's zero tax on that.
On the gains.
On the sale. Yeah, so if you buy it for 100 and sell it for 4,
and that's yours. And that's different than property tax.
Right, yeah. No, property tax is something we pay, yearly.
Yearly, right.
No, but this capital gains exemption just allows you...
So why wouldn't you invest in real estate at that point?
Absolutely. Like if you put 100,000 with your investor or your bank or whatever, and they brought it to 400 and you cashed out, you pay on that. In your property. Now, if you have multiple properties or revenue properties, it's different. Right. But in your primary
property, that is really cool.
It's a great deal. It for, like I say, for 2 or 3 generations, my grandparents, my parents, myself, that has been our path to, and I say in a larger sense, Canadians' path to wealth has been in their homes.
Cool. Well, then that makes sense then why you're kind of super excited to help new Canadians land and get up on their feet. Right? Yeah. You're changing generations at that point.
Absolutely. And you know what? And they will have the same benefit that we do in the future when they go to sell their primary home.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's really awesome. Well, Warren, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your time.
I appreciate this. Yeah. Thank you, Andrew. Nice to meet you as well. So next time I come through, then we got to grab a coffee or something as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.